What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Sideswipe the Boss back at it again with another tier list, and I am here with the Marvel movies, Marvel Infinity Saga movies, and I'm gonna put them in the tier list. So I know I recently just put out, I think like 2 weeks ago, it was Marvel movies ranked, and now I'm just gonna put them in the tier list, which also gives me a chance to explain myself a little bit for what I put on the pros and cons. Just a little bit, because if I explained fully, it would be too long and it would become a review for those movies. And I'll get to those down the line. But for right now, let's just get into it. And if you do end up enjoying this video, just hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds. And also, if you want to see more videos like this, just hit that subscribe button and click the bell for post notifications so you can get notified when more of my videos come out later in the future. Alright, so we'll be going in release date order, which means we're starting out with Iron Man. And Iron Man, it was a pretty solid start to the MCU. It really was. Robert Downey Jr. is the perfect Iron Man. I really don't see anybody else playing him. And even if like 20 or 30 years down the line they decide to reboot this, I don't think anyone will be able to overcome like his greatness, to be honest. But yeah, Iron Man was a solid start to the MCU. Had a solid storyline, some solid side characters. The main villain wasn't all that. And he wasn't bad or anything, but he wasn't all that. And it was a pretty decent movie for the start of cinematic universe. So I'll probably put it in the B tier. I don't think it's going to end up in the top of the B tier though, but we'll see as we go along. Next up, we have The Incredible Hulk. And regardless of the fact that Hulk was played by a different actor back then, the storyline, it wasn't very strong. It was very boring. There was only like 2 or 3 fight scenes in the whole movie. The only fight scene I did like was at the end where it was Hulk versus Abomination, and I also like Abomination, so he was pretty good. But other than that, it was just a bland storyline. Side characters weren't that great at all. So I'm probably going to put it in the D tier or F tier. Probably the F tier. I'll just put it in the F tier. Next up, we have Iron Man 2. And I really don't like this movie. I know some people give it the benefit of the doubt, but I just don't. The storyline, even though it wasn't as bland as Hulk, it just didn't make sense to me at all. The side characters weren't as great as they were in Iron Man 2. I mean, the first Iron Man. Even though Rhodey, I liked Rhodey. The recast for Rhodey was good. But the main villain was bland. Once again, there weren't that many action scenes. There's probably like 2 or 3 in the whole movie. I did like the connections, setting up Thor at the end and also had the prototype Captain America shield. But other than that, I didn't really care for it that much. So I'm also going to put it in the F tier, but above Hulk. Next up, we have the first Thor. And contrary to popular belief, I actually enjoy this movie a lot. Most people don't, but I do. I mean, Chris Hemsworth is a perfect Thor. I do like the action scenes. Loki is amazing. He's an amazing main villain. And he was my favorite main villain until a movie later on in this list, which I'll get to. But yeah, it was just a solid movie. Some of the side characters were kind of bland. And all those Dutch angles, kind of threw me off a bit as well. But for me, I'm just going to put it in the C tier because it was a solid movie nonetheless. Next up, we have Captain America, the First Avenger. And I also like this a lot more than most people. Chris Evans is a great Captain America. I really like the storyline. I really like his origin. In my opinion, it's like the best origin story in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's awesome. The villain, he's okay. It's not really that interesting. There are some side characters that kind of weigh the movie down a bit. And the third act is kind of rushed, to be honest. But other than that, it is a solid movie. It's my favorite origin story movie. So I'm probably going to have to put it above Iron Man in the B tier. Next up, we have the first Avengers movie. And automatic S tier movie. Joss Whedon, even though he's made some not so great movies, after this one, he did do something right by bringing the Avengers together. It was also almost like never heard of, like a good team up movie, at least, other than like Watchmen or something. But yeah, the chemistry in here is great. The action is amazing. Loki is once again a great main villain. And yeah, definitely S tier material. Next up, we have Iron Man 3. And Iron Man 3 was kind of a disappointment to me. It wasn't terrible, but it was still kind of a disappointment. I mean, the main villain twist was awful. I mean, I know I'm not the only one who thinks that. I did like how they handled Iron Man's story with like his PTSD from the Battle of New York and stuff. The side characters didn't make sense. I mean, there were some pretty good action moments, but once again, there weren't that many. So for me, I'll probably put it at the bottom of the C tier because it technically wasn't a bad movie. It's just very disappointing. Next up, we have Thor: The Dark World, which is my least favorite MCU movie, and I think I don't need to explain why. Ironically, jumping from my least favorite movie to my favorite movie of the MCU, we have Captain America: The Winter Soldier. That's definitely staying at the top of the S tier. I mean, I don't know what else I have to say. You got great characters, great action moments, great chemistry between characters. My favorite main villain of a MCU movie in The Winter Soldier, even though technically he is a hero now, but back when he was a villain, he was my favorite main villain. So yeah, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is just an outstanding movie. The Russo brothers, they knew what they were doing. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. And this was a great movie as well, especially because these characters were almost unheard of, to be honest. They weren't very popular in the comics, but when they were brought to the big screen, James Gunn just made them awesome. I mean, whoever thought you would care for a raccoon in a tree? I didn't at first, but now those two are like the best characters. But yeah, they have great chemistry overall, some great action scenes. Even though the villains aren't really that great, they kind of are overshadowed by how great the main heroes are. So it's probably going to go on like the A tier. I don't know if it'll end up the top or bottom of the A tier. Next up, we have my least favorite Avengers movie, Avengers Age of Ultron. It just kind of felt like a trailer for Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, it has some good action points, especially that one-shot action scene, the team-up one. It was cool. Ultron's a pretty decent villain, but other than that, it was kind of boring a little bit, overshadowed by a lot of character drama, and also it just, like, preluded to what Phase 3 would be about. So, for me, it'll probably end up the bottom of the C tier. Next up, we have the first Ant-Man, and I know I don't really like it that much. I know it's towards the bottom of my ranking. It wasn't that interesting to me. Paul Rudd is a great Scott Lang, though. I'll give it that. The suit's awesome. The powers are awesome. That Ant-Man versus Falcon scene, even though it kind of was fan service a bit, I do like fan service, so, give me more. But other than that, it was kind of boring. There weren't that many action scenes. Most of the side characters were annoying. And yeah, it just wasn't that very interesting. And the main villain wasn't that good either. So it'll probably be in the D tier. Next up, we have Captain America: Civil War. I do like this movie a lot more than most, even though I do agree that it did feel more like an Avengers movie or like an Iron Man 4 or something other than a Captain America movie. But it was good nonetheless. There were some great action moments, great character moments. The introduction of Spider-Man and Black Panther, that was awesome. So for me, it's going to go in the A tier, but it's probably going to be at the bottom of the A tier. Next up, we have Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange was actually a solid movie, nonetheless, of its ranking in my rankings list. Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch is a great Doctor Strange. The main villain wasn't that great at all, but Dormammu, even though he wasn't the main villain, he was a good side villain nonetheless, so I like that. But it also was kind of boring, not that many action moments. The side characters, most of them weren't great. I did like Mordo, and Wong. I did like them too, and I kind of liked the Ancient One, and it was kind of emotional when she died. But other than that, it's just a solid introduction to Doctor Strange, but nothing more. So I'll probably put it in the C tier, but above Age of Ultron. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And even though it wasn't as good as the first one, it still was a good movie nonetheless with some great character moments. It did have a good villain in Ego, so I like that. I also like Nebula's redemption arc, but it was kind of overshadowed by too many villains in Ego, the Ravagers, the Sovereign. The Sovereign, I don't even know why they were there. Just probably to have that Adam Warlock tease at the end. Yeah, it was. Some jokes didn't land as well. And yeah, it was just trying to copy the first one, and it didn't do such a great job. But it's still a good movie nonetheless. So I'll probably put it at the bottom of the B tier. Next up, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. And it was a pretty good Spider-Man movie. Probably one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. Tom Holland, was a great Spider-Man. Vulture, Michael Keaton as Vulture. He's a great villain. He has quite a few great side characters, but then also not a few good side characters, like Peter's love interest. I didn't understand her point. Maybe just like a connection to the villain or something. MJ, even though she's technically not the traditional MJ like in the comics, I still like her. Even though she didn't do much this movie, she's still alright, I got a little soft spot for Zendaya, But other than that, it was a good movie, and I did like Iron Man's role being like the mentor to Spider-Man. So I'll probably also put it in the B tier, but maybe I like the top of the B tier. Next up, we have Thor Ragnarok, which redeemed the Thor series. Thank the Lord. Thor was great in here. Loki was great once again. There was a great main villain in Hela. Had some pretty great action scenes. The comedy was, it was overwhelming at times, but it still was on point. Taika Waititi is a great comedy director. So for me, I'm probably put Thor Ragnarok at the bottom of the A tier. Next up, we have Black Panther. And I'm kind of in the middle for like Black Panther. Like some people consider it overrated. I don't think it's overrated, but I don't think it's like super outstanding or anything. Chadwick Boseman, he is a great Black Panther nonetheless. He does great in the role. The side characters are very interesting actually. The world of Wakanda is actually great, to be honest. Like it's visually great to look at, except that final battle, which was just a mess. But other than that, you had a great main villain in Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. And yeah, it was a solid movie for Black Panther. I can just say that, more like a good, solid movie. So for me, it'll probably go just under Spider-Man Homecoming in the B tier. Next up, we have Avengers Infinity War, which is my favorite Avengers movie. So, that's definitely going in the S tier, but probably like the middle of the S tier. And the reason for that is, Thanos is an amazing villain. He's technically like the protagonist of Infinity War. So, he's awesome. You got all the Avengers and the Guardians coming together to stop him. And in the end, they lose, which was shocking. Shook my soul, my heart, all of it. So, yeah, Avengers Infinity War was just a great Avengers movie. It's a great movie overall. And the ending was it kept you on the edge of your seat and makes you want to come back to see how the Avengers were going to stop Thanos in the end. Next up, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. And just like the first Ant-Man, it's going to go in the D tier, but above the first Ant-Man. Just because, Hope is better in this movie, to be honest. That's probably the only reason why it's above Ant-Man, is Hope's better. Scott's still good. I liked his connection with his daughter in this movie. It was cool. But other than that, the villain wasn't that interesting in Ghost. Sonny Birch was annoying. He was just there, to be honest. There are a few connections that kind of didn't make sense. And also, it was kind of boring too. Not that many action scenes, but it was still just slightly better than the first one. So that's why it's in the D tier. Next up, we have Captain Marvel. And this was one of the most disappointing movies on this list, to be honest. I was so sad when it flopped. So, well, it didn't flop, but like, it really wasn't that good to me. I mean, you had a few standout points. You had like Nick Fury, return of Phil Coulson for that little cameo, even though they're both de-aged, which was a little weird, but you know, it makes sense for the story. Talos, he was a pretty good character. I wouldn't say villain, more like character. But yeah, the main character, Carol Danvers, wasn't that great. She was kind of bland. Jan Rog, who was the main villain, wasn't that great at all. And there was a lot of things that just didn't make sense to me in the movie. And it was also kind of boring, with only like having 3 or 4 major action sequences. So for me, it's probably going to go at like the bottom of the D tier. Next up, we have Avengers Endgame. And for me, it's going to go at the top of the A tier just because there are a few glaring plot holes that the movie creates that I just can't ignore. Like the time travel logic, Old Man Cap, even though it was cool to see him and it was satisfying, when you think about it logically, it kind of doesn't make sense. And it opens more questions than it answers them. But other than that, the movie itself was great. The action was great. It was a fitting end to the Infinity Saga. And yeah, just a great movie overall. So A tier for Avengers Endgame. And finally, we have Spider-Man Far From Home. I think this is the best Spider-Man movie. I'm not going to go too much into detail about why I think that, because this video is already long enough as it is. But yeah, it's just a great Spider-Man movie. Mysterio is a great main villain. You know, Spider-Man, he does a lot more in this. He's kind of more down to earth in a sense, if you really think about it. And he just wants to be a normal kid. So I really like that aspect of it. And yeah, there was some great action scenes, great chemistry. I do like MJ and Peter's romance. It's one of the few romances I like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But yeah, it's just a great movie overall. So I'm going to put it in the A tier, but below Civil War. So that's the list, folks. F tier, we have Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk, and Thor the Dark World. D tier, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man, and Captain Marvel. C tier, we have Thor, Iron Man 3, Doctor Strange, and Avengers Age of Ultron. B tier, we have Spider-Man Homecoming, Black Panther, Captain America the First Avenger, Iron Man, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. A tier, we have Avengers Endgame, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America Civil War, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Thor Ragnarok. And in the S tier, we have Captain America the Winter Soldier, Avengers Infinity War, and The Avengers. So that's the list, everybody. Let me know in the comment section down below if you like the list. Would you change it? Would you keep it the same? Just let me know that in the comment section down below. Also, let me know in the comments what tier list you would like to see next, and I will get to it as soon as I can. And if you did enjoy this video, just hit that like button for me and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.